Right, yeah, that's smart. Yeah, my interface is in Dutch, but I think I pressed like broadcast. I mean, it's in Dutch. It's uitzending starten.
Probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
Okay. Hi.
So it pops up. Yeah, I can see you.
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
and I can hear myself. Yeah. But when so do are we on a Skype during the AMA or is it
No,
just
not at all. I
no?
mean,
Okay.
unless you want to. I mean, I'll be available at all kinds of stuff like on Skype text or whatever, but I think you might want to have full focus on the questions or whatever.
Yeah, I think as well. Also, like for me, the focus, but also for the internet connection,
Oh, yeah,
for the
no, smart.
bandwidth. Yeah, yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. I hope the bandwidth. Like sometimes my like I have two computers running. Actually, I put the other one. I turned off Wi-Fi, and then on this one, I try to turn off like all the backup, like cloud backup stuff and
Hmm.
programs like that. But sometimes they kind of ignore me and they start backing up anyway.
Okay.
I hope that doesn't happen. I think I turned them all off. I should probably turn off Dropbox just to be sure as well.
Okay, that's awesome. I can see you perfect on this side. Unless you have the actual Talking Next site open, you won't hear yourself at all.
Okay, and I only have the host site open
That's well,
anyway.
you have to. I mean, you can have both. I mean, you can mute yourself just on the video. Just hit mute, and you won't be having a problem with that.
Yeah, I will just look at the host page because it's kind of distracting to see
Yep,
myself.
absolutely. That makes perfect sense.
So so we're live then right now or no?
Yeah, now you're live.
Okay,
I can see you perfectly fine.
so I should watch what I say then.
Well, actually, that might be true.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll leave it to it. You can just mute your microphone or whatever until you start. But it's amazing that when people come in, they see your face, so they know that this is about to happen.
Yeah. No. Sure. I will. I will. How do you say it? I will send out some tweets,
Perfect.
and then I think. I mean, we should probably wait until like maybe a little bit past 9,
Yep.
just
Probably
so
smart.
yeah, just so people don't feel left out. Like if they like join like 2 after 9.
Exactly. And just to be clear, I mean, we will publish. I mean, unless you don't want that, we will do this public afterwards with all the questions lined up and probably transcript it
Yeah.
just so other people can see it.
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll leave it to it. Any questions at all during the thing? Obviously, I'll be listening, but if you want to send me some personal questions on Skype, I'll be there all the time. So no worries.
Okay. Cool.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the
Okay.
opportunity.
Talk later.
Okay. Bye.
Perfect. Bye.
So if anyone has any questions specifically about their own company, that's fine as well. Like I see a few questions and they're quite generic, and that's fine. I think it's interesting for most people. But if you have like a very specific use case or not use case, but situation for yourself, for your own startup or something you're thinking of starting, feel free to ask about that as well. It's actually a good trick to get some publicity for your own startup. Like don't abuse the opportunity, I guess. But I don't actually know if anyone is listening to this, but I'm just keep talking till we really start. But something I try to do when I'm at a conference, and I don't really enjoy like walking up to people I don't know and then introducing myself and then trying to find interesting people to talk to. So what I try to do if there's like a conference with presentations, etc. I mean, I try to present myself if possible, but otherwise I just try to like ask an interesting question. I think most people are kind of like scared of asking questions, or they're like just sitting taking notes. But if you ask a question, you have a chance to briefly introduce yourself. So you can say your name, you can in one sentence describe what your company is doing, and then like the whole audience knows you, kind of like they know what you're up to, they know your name, they know you're intelligent because you ask a smart question. And then after the presentations, like there's usually time for networking. Then like the people that are interested in what you're doing, they automatically come to you because they know where to find you because you already introduced yourself to the whole audience. So I think that's a smart way to like network and find interesting people. So you could even leverage that today as well, I guess, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this. Yeah, don't just spam your own URL or something, but try to ask an interesting question and incorporate your own startup in there, and then you get some free publicity. I have my laptop balanced on my couch. I don't know if that's smart. I'm probably not typing during the AMA, so otherwise you would see this. So a few minutes left. I'm just reading the questions, so I don't have to do that. Like the few questions that are already in, I'm just reading them now. And feel free to like ask questions about other startup related stuff. Like it doesn't have to be about user acquisition. Okay, so it's 9 p.m. at least at my time zone. Curious to hear where you're located. But we don't really have like a chat here, so feel free to. I will check my ad mentions on Twitter as well. Probably not as much as the questions because obviously it's about the questions. But yeah, if you want to send me a quick comment, I will try to check my ad mentions as well. So I see Victoria just tweeted that she's watching. Hello, Victoria. Wait, what's up with my Twitter? This is not my primary computer, so maybe stuff isn't working as it's supposed to sometimes. So yeah, okay, let's send out some tweets. I'm just waiting like a few more, like 2 more minutes, just so I know how I am. Like if I have to be somewhere at 9, I will probably be there at 9:05. So just to be, how do you say? Just to include those kind of people as well. I'm gonna start 2 minutes late. Yeah, but that's not fair, of course, for the people that were early. But if you were early, you got to put your questions in early, so you, I mean, I think then you have a higher chance at being answered. But I hope to answer every question. Yeah, so I think I'm just gonna start this thing. before I start, I should probably introduce myself. Or let's just double check the video is streaming. Oh yeah, there I am. So awkward seeing yourself. Yeah, so just for the people that don't know me, it might actually be the majority. I don't know who's watching exactly. But my name is Marc with a C. Last name is Kulbrugge. You can forget that. It's pretty hard to remember, I think. But yeah, so I'm Marc. I'm based in Eindhoven, a city in the Netherlands, and I'm the founder of Betalist, Betalist.com, which I've been doing for a little bit over 4 years now. And what we do at Betalist is we feature tomorrow's startups today. So if you go to the website betalist.com, you will see, I think, about 5 to 6 startups every day that are like at a very early stage. We're often the first to write about these startups. And some of them might not exist anymore after a few months. Some of them might be doing okay, and maybe a few of them might become like very big. Like for example, we wrote about Pinterest like 4 years ago before they launched, and now of course they're like worth billions. Other examples include IFT or If This Then That, Zapier or Zapier. I don't know how to pronounce all these startup names. Mailbox, which got acquired by Dropbox, of course. Yeah, so every day, like we publish new startups, and we've published, I think, around 5,000 by now. So I've seen a lot of early stage startups. And before Betalist, I did some other startups as well, but I'm now focused on Betalist. So that's a little bit about me. If you want to learn more about me, then you can Google how I tricked TechCrunch into writing about my startup, where I will explain like how I started Betalist. Maybe someone can tweet it, or I'm sure there's some information on your screen somewhere. And if you want to mention me on Twitter, it's Marc with a C and then KOHLBRUGGE. You can probably find it somewhere as well. Yeah, so enough about me, I guess. So let's get to the questions. So let's see. Yeah, let's start with Ellen's question. So the question is, how do you recommend reaching out to your users the first time? So how do you reach out to your users the first time? So first, I guess you need users, but we'll probably come to that later. But once you've got some users, or at least people that signed up to your service, like I wouldn't consider them users yet until they actually use your product or service. But yeah, so how do you reach out to them? I think like initially when you're just starting out, you want to get a great understanding of who your customer is, what their needs are, why they signed up, what their expectations are, what their pain points are, how you can solve it, what other solutions they've tried, maybe also what they paid for other alternatives, so you can get a sense of like what your pricing should be like. And you should probably do this like before you have any users, before you start building a product. You want to talk to potential customers first, so you know what product to build in the first place. So hopefully you start with that. I talk to a lot of startups, and they start with an idea, and then they build a product, and then they start thinking about the customer or about the user. But that you should do that initially. But it's hard. Like it's fun to create something. You have this idea, and then you want to build it, and then you worry about users later. So I get that. But ideally, you talk to your users first before building anything. And I think you can really use a hands-on approach early on. I would recommend, like for your first 100 users, maybe even more, reach out to them personally, like one-on-one. I guess you could even try and call them on Skype and stuff like that. What I usually do is, oh, there's an ambulance. I don't know if you hear that. But what I try to do is, for the first signups I get, I try to research the person a little bit. Like just Google them, check them on LinkedIn. If you're using Gmail, there is this plugin called Rapportive, which shows you like a little bio of the person that's emailing you or that's signing up, etc. So try to understand who they are, what they're working on, what their business is, etc. and then send them a personal, like a short personal message. So no mass email, don't send everyone the same message, but like send a plain text just using Gmail. Send them an email like, hey, thanks for signing up. Maybe include some message that shows that you know who they are. Don't be too creepy, I guess. Like, don't be like, I know where you live, but just like ask an insightful question again, like, how can we help you do this and this and this with your business? And then personalize it, make it about them, and make it about helping them. Like, they signed up for a reason, probably for their own reasons. You might be able to solve a problem they have. So try to get a better understanding of that problem. And then, in my experience, if you keep the email personal, use the right tone of voice. So talk to a person like you would if you would meet them in real life. So don't all of a sudden be like, dear sir or madam, unless that's how you would approach a person or a customer in real life as well. Just use, normally you could use informal language, just like I'm doing right now. And yeah, keep it short, keep it personal about that person. So when I say personal, I don't mean ask them about their hobbies, but just make the email about them and not too much about your product yet. And then you will likely get a response, and you can get a little bit of a better understanding of why they signed up and maybe what your product should be like. Maybe you can help them like with the onboarding, make them feel comfortable with the product you're providing. And yeah, do that maybe for the first 100 users. It depends like how much work it is. You can do it for like the first 1,000 probably, but definitely try it for a while until maybe you keep getting the same answers from people, and then you know like, oh, people are stuck at this time in the onboarding process, so maybe we should fix that before we focus on getting additional users. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question, Alan. So how do you recommend reaching out to your users? Just by email, make it personal. If you want, you can try like calling them. Like, I haven't tried it myself. I think I'm too scared to do that, but I think people will be either creeped out or they will appreciate it. So just try it out and let me know. So yeah, we've answered that question, I think. So I'm just trying out this backend with all the questions. So let's go to the next question. I probably pronounced this wrong. Marius Norheim asks, what are the best marketing channels for getting users? It depends on your product. So I see a lot of startups focusing on getting press on TechCrunch and technology blogs like that. I think that's great to get that PR if you can get it. But I think you have to be strategic about it and ask yourself, like, who is your target audience? Who is your target customer? It's probably not other entrepreneurs. So who is your target audience, and where do they hang out? Like, which blogs do they read? Which events do they go to? Which other software do they use? Which newsletters are they subscribed to? So try to find where so first define what your target customer is, and then figure out where they are. But so the first step is very important. You need to know who your customer is before you can figure out what the marketing channels are. And if you do happen to get featured on TechCrunch or Hacker News or Product Hunt or Betalist or any of the other websites, I think that's great. And it can get you some real users, and it can get you some publicity in front of investors and journalists and stuff like that. But don't get stuck on getting press in the technology media, unless that's really where your customers are. Like for me, with Betalist, my customers are other entrepreneurs. So for me, it's very helpful to get featured on a website like TechCrunch because my audience is there. But for many products and services, your audience might be totally somewhere else. So yeah, when you ask me like what are the best marketing channels for getting users, it really depends on the different types of products you might be selling. And then of course you have media like social media like Twitter and Facebook, and you can try Google AdSense. Honestly, I don't have too much experience with that. I'm more focused on early stage startups. And I think for early stage startups, and I just hear the sound, so I hope I'm still live. Yeah, looks like it. I don't know what happened there. Oh, I'm getting a question like a chat. Anyway, I don't think that's meant for me. Someone from Talking Next, Marlon, I think is sending me a question. Anyway, marketing channels. Yeah, so for early stage startups, don't focus too much on growth. Focus on making sure you understand your customer. Focus on making sure your product solves a real pain point. And you can start doing that with just a handful of customers, and based on their feedback, you can iterate. And then later, it becomes, of course, important to like get some more customers to scale up. And then I think it's just a matter of trying out different channels to see what works best. So you need to have like the metrics in place and the analytics to really track like which channels are converting best for you. And then once you found it, fine tune it and really go for it. But to be honest, that's not my expertise. I think if I had an expertise, it would be early stage startups. And then it's really a matter of getting like a few dozen signups even. That should be enough. And really try to look at where your potential customers are and then make sure you are there as well. So let's see, next question. Also from Marius Norheim. And again, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. Do you have any tips to increase retention or make users spend more time on your site? So tips on how to increase retention. So basically making sure people keep coming back, just for those that don't know the terminology, and make sure they spend more time on your site. So with regards to having them spend more time on your site, my question would be like, why would you want them to spend more time on your site? If you look at Google, for example, their objective is to have you spend as few seconds as possible on their site, because their value is in providing you with search results, so you click through to a different site. So if they do their job well, then you're not spending a lot of time on their site, but you do keep coming back because they're providing value. So instead of worrying about or focusing on time on sites, I would focus on making sure you're providing value to your customer. And the way you know whether you're providing value is if they're willing to pay, if they keep coming back, etc. I mean, you can talk to them, of course, and if they cancel the subscription or whatever, you can ask like why, and you can learn stuff about your customer that way. But I wouldn't focus too much time on how much time users spend on your website. And it might be like a few cases where that is important. I can't really think of anyone or anything, but I think it also comes back to providing value. Then with regards to increasing retention, first you need to know like what the retention is. So someone signs up for your service, then do you have the right metrics in place to really know how often they log in, like if they haven't logged in for a while, like can you send them a message? And there are some services available for that. Stuff like Mixpanel. I really like Intercom. So at Intercom, for example, you can say like anyone that hasn't logged in for 7 days, send them this message. Or anyone that has recently upgraded, send them this message. And you can like send personalized messages for all kinds of different situations. And I think that can really help you increase retention, because maybe people forget about the service you're providing. So by sending them like a little heads up, like, hey, don't forget about us. Probably you want to provide some value in the email you send as well. But yeah, I think the best way to increase retention is to increase user satisfaction. And to increase user satisfaction, you have to increase value. I mean, it all comes back to value. And to increase value, I mean, it again depends on the business you're in. but you can look at which people are like churning, like which people are leaving your service or are becoming inactive. Make sure you really track that, and it can be very easy. You can just, if you have like a MySQL database and you track what the last time is someone logged in, you can just go through, you can have like an SQL query where you look at anyone that hasn't logged in for the last 7 days, and then just reach out to them again, like just try a Gmail. That's fine in the beginning, and try to understand like why they stopped using your service. Like it's okay if they stop using your service, but try to understand like why it is, and also explain that to them. You're not necessarily trying to convince them to come back, but you're trying to understand why they didn't come back, and because you want to improve the service and you want to help them. And apparently you didn't meet their expectations, so you want to meet their expectations. So you want to know like what they wanted from the service that you didn't deliver. So yeah, that would be my answer to increasing retention, like understanding the reasons for people not to come back and then fixing those if they are the right customer. Like you don't necessarily need every type of customer. Sometimes the product and the customer just don't match, and that's fine as well. So next question. I mean, man, those are difficult names. Oyvind Hellenes. Oyvind Hellenes. Hey Mark, I really like the way you hacked yourself into TechCrunch. You got a lot of signups, but I'm curious to know what you did in the following weeks. How did you capitalize on your traction and keep the users interested? So for those that don't know, when I just started Betalist, we got featured on TechCrunch and we got a lot of signups, or a lot of traffic, I should say. And as is the case with these types of media coverage, you get like a spike in traffic, but that doesn't last. Like again, it's a spike, it drops off like pretty much the day after. And then it feels like you have to start all over again. But it's possible to capture part of that traffic to make sure those people do come back. Again, it's about retention. But it also depends on if the media coverage you got was in front of the right audience. Because if you get like featured on TechCrunch, but your product is for vets, then yeah, you're probably gonna see maybe like a spike just because people are interested in discovering new products, but they might not be your ideal customer. So they're not coming back because, well, they're interested because there's this TechCrunch article, but then you're not really providing value to them because you're not solving any of their problems. So it's very difficult to make sure they come back, and you don't need them. Like they are not your target audience anyway. So yeah, be aware of that. So, but what we did, to go back to the question, or what I did back then, it was just me. With TechCrunch is the moment I got featured on TechCrunch, I added like a personalized message at the top of the page that said like, hey, TechCrunch visitors, thanks for dropping by. If you want to discover the next startups before anyone else, sign up for our email list. And then I had this email embed form where people could just leave their email address and then sign up for the newsletter. And I also included like a link to our Twitter account, like a follow button. And those things seem kind of obvious, I guess. I added them at the last minute, but they really helped making sure people kept coming back, because people see new products all over the place every day. So you kind of need, when they are at your website, you need to capture their attention, and you need to make sure they keep coming back the days after. So getting their email address or getting them to follow you on Twitter or Facebook, etc. I think that's a great way to like kind of have a way back into their what do you call it? Their attention, I guess. And in my experience, email works really well. So make sure you have an email sign up form. And for me, for Betalist, it was really easy because our product was about delivering content, like the latest startups, and so people could sign up to get the latest startups every day in their email inbox. If you have a different kind of product where maybe you don't have new content every day or every week, maybe you should try content marketing, but yeah, somehow try to get their email address, and you probably have to like give something in exchange. So what you see a lot of companies do, like they say like, leave your email address and we'll send you this ebook or this infographic or something of value that people really want and that they are willing to leave their email address for. And then, of course, be very, how do you say, respectful with regards to their email. Like, you don't want to start spamming them. But you can send a drip campaign. So if you don't know what a drip campaign is, it's basically a sequence of emails. So someone leaves their email address, maybe to get the free ebook or whatever. And so first you send them the ebook, then maybe a few days later you send like another email with, again, some value. You're not trying to sell them anything yet. You just provide more value, maybe like an article you wrote. And then maybe like even a few days later you send some more information they really want. Make sure it's something they find valuable. And then once you've done that a few times, once you have established your credibility and reputation and you start building this relationship with that email subscriber, then you can start the sales process. But first you need to provide value, and then later on you can reach out to them. And again, I would do it like one-on-one personally. Don't automate it immediately, but email them like, hey, I noticed you signed up for the newsletter, blah, blah, blah. Can we help you, or are you interested in this product, or can you talk about the problem or you have that our product might solve, etc. And then again, try to get a better understanding, etc. So that's a pretty long answer. So let's go to the next question. Again from Oyvind Hellenes, and again, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. Do you feel you have found a sweet spot for how many startups to feature on a monthly basis? If so, how did you find it? So at Betalist, we feature around 5 startups every day, so about 150 a month. And so initially how it worked, when I just started out, I just went looking for startups on websites like Hacker News. So this was 4 years ago. And then I think I might have found like 2 a day, and then I would just publish them. And pretty soon startups came to us. And at some point we created a system where people could submit their startup, and then we would get a list of submissions, and then we would pick interesting startups to feature on the website. And so nowadays we get around 700 or 800 startup submissions each month. And again, we only publish about 150. So we get way more than we publish. And part of the reason for that is just because of the way the website is structured. Like if we would publish 15 startups a day right now, that would just be overwhelming with the current design, and especially the newsletter, because I mean, if you know the newsletter, it's already a little bit overwhelming, I think, with 5 startups in it. But if you would have 3 times as more, 3 times more or even more, then it would be like quite overwhelming. So that's, I think, we haven't really chosen 150 startups a month, like very specifically, but it's just what we feel currently is a nice number. Like we have quite a few startups every day, like about 5, so there's always something interesting in there for you, or hopefully, but it's not too overwhelming. And we're actually working on some stuff to personalize the startups you see. So you might be interested in educational startups, and maybe every startup from Switzerland or whatever, and then someone else might be only interested in photography startups. So should you get the same newsletter? Well, probably not. Like you should probably only get to see the startups you're interested in, and maybe like the most popular startups of all of them. So we're working on a personalized newsletter system like that, which allows us hopefully to publish more startups. So of those hundreds and hundreds of startups that submit each month, we hopefully can publish some more. And then we send it specifically to the users that would be interested in that, because I just talked about this earlier, that getting just random signups isn't super helpful. And like people kind of like self-filter themselves. So if you have a website like Betalist, like people are not going to sign up for your startup unless they're interested, but it doesn't always mean they're also going to be a customer long term. So something I think we're going to improve as well with Betalist once we have those personalized newsletters, etc. So next question, Usefest. Hi Mark, I've mainly used Twitter and Facebook to reach my company audience, but I'm not sure how effective it is. How effective do you think these channels are? You also have many thousands on the Betalist Twitter account and also quite a few yourself. Any suggestions to gain engaged followers? I think it depends on the business you have. For us, for Betalist, we use Twitter and we use Facebook and etc. But email is our most important traffic driver. We got, I think, somewhere over 10,000 subscribers that receive the email every day, and the open rates with email, or the click-through rates, are way higher than with a tweet, right? If you see an email in your inbox, you're probably going to open it and you might click through to interesting startups. And with a tweet, you might not even see it because you get so many tweets. So in my experience, getting someone's email is way more valuable than getting them as a Twitter follower. Definitely use all the channels you can get. And then at Betalist, I think we have 25,000 Twitter followers. And we haven't really done any magic or any strategies for that. Just patience, it just took time and it just grows organically. I think one advantage we have as a content company is that people share our posts every day, which includes our Twitter handle, like when they share on Twitter. So maybe someone sees a few tweets from Betalist and then they think, hey, that's interesting, so I'm going to follow it. So for a content company, that's much easier. But if you don't have a content company, personally, I wouldn't worry too much about getting Twitter followers. If you do really want them for some reason, then what I try to do at my personal Twitter accounts, but I'm not doing this with any strategic intent or whatever, but I see that if I engage with people, even people that don't follow me, but people I follow, and maybe they ask a question, and you send some answers, you help them with stuff, sooner or later they're gonna take notice and they're gonna follow you back. And that's a great way to build a relationship with maybe also people that are sometimes hard to reach, people that are very busy, they get a lot of email, so they might not read it all, and it might feel quite, what do you call it, quite some work to reply to an email, but replying to a tweet is much easier. So if you want to build your Twitter following, then just interact with people. And personally, I hate the automated ways to favorite tweets and stuff like that. If I see someone favoriting anytime I mention the word startup, then I block them because I know they're using one of their services. And I think people notice that. And Twitter and Facebook is about they are social media, so don't automate it. Be social and interact with people, try to help people, and slowly your audience will grow. Yeah, so let's see, next question. Oyvind Hellenes again. I guess you want your site to have a reputation for being hard to get featured on. Making it more exclusive will certainly increase the average quality of startups. Has exclusivity been an important part of your marketing strategy? So I think it's true that we are exclusive, because again, we get way more startup submissions than we feature. So the chance of getting selected and being featured isn't 100%, it's much lower than that. So there is some sense of exclusivity, but that hasn't been that was never an objective for me, but I think it has worked out quite well. I think the strategy was more about being different. There were already a lot of websites out there that feature startups. like TechCrunch, for example. They write about startups when they get funding, etc. And I think what set Betalist apart, and still does, is that we focus on the very early stage startups, which for early adopters is interesting because they often want to be the first to try out a new service. They want to provide feedback to the startup founders. They want to get their first name as a username. So like, I think our strategy was to be different. I mean, otherwise, like, why do you start? Like, if the solution already exists, it doesn't make sense to like build another thing. So I felt there was a need for a platform that focused early stage startups, both from the early adopter side, but also from the startup side, because startups need beta testers early on. So I think that was our strategy. And then in a sense that means it's exclusive, because if a startup was already live, for example, then we wouldn't consider publishing it anymore. So in that sense, I think we are very exclusive. And sometimes that's hard because an interesting startup just launched and they want to get featured on Betalist, and we say like, well, sorry, our policy is not to feature recently launched startups. Like, we only feature startups that aren't launched yet. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult. We miss out on interesting startups, but I think our goal remains very clear, and people know what to expect when they come to Betalist. Let's see if it answered the question. Yeah, so the intent was never to be hard to get featured on. We just feature the startups we think are interesting. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. And now, yeah, it has become difficult to get features on the website because we get so many submissions. And I think maybe that's good for branding, but personally, I would like it much more if we could provide everyone with publicity. So again, that's why we're moving to the personalized newsletter system, or at least experimenting with that to see if we can publish some more startups because of that, while still providing everyone with relevant signups. So next question by Johansson Michael, or Michael Johansson, I guess. How do you balance your focus between business development and product development? Have you found a golden formula? Yeah, that's balance. That's a good one, and not just between business development and product development. So when I started Betalist, it was just like this experiment, and then over time it became more successful, and more people started submitting their startups, and at some point I went full time on it, and I brought on some people to help. But I still, until recently, was spending a lot of time, or maybe like most of my time, like not improving the product, not improving or growing the business even, but just keeping the site running. Like, again, we get a lot of startup submissions each month, and a lot of those founders have questions like, hey, how can we get featured quicker? Can you edit this description? Like, it might sound like small details, but because we get so many incoming submissions each month, it took me quite some time every day to go through that, and then like to pick the interesting startups, and then to feature them, and people can pay to like expedite the process, and then like we need to create an invoice because it wasn't automated yet, because I didn't have the time to automate it. So I was basically just keeping the website running for a long time and not able to improve the product much. But recently I brought on board a community and marketing manager, Rabia. I don't know if she's watching, maybe. And she's been really helping me with that kind of stuff. So there's more freedom and space for me to focus on product development again. And you will see or hear a little bit more about that in the coming weeks and months. One thing we recently launched, or maybe like a few weeks ago already, was a submission dashboard. So previously, if you submitted your startup, then it would kind of like disappear and you had to wait. And now we've built a submission dashboard where you can see where you are in the process of submitting your startup, and you can change the description of your startup or the screenshot like after the fact. So we're improving the product. And so to come back to your question on balancing focus between business development and product development, um, even though it has been 4 years, but it hasn't been 4 years full time, I still feel like the product needs work. I feel like we aren't there yet. I think we've achieved quite a bit, but I don't feel we're there yet. I don't feel like, oh, now is the time to really scale it up. I mean, it has been like growing organically, and we've done some marketing, but yeah, I think there are like a few issues I want to solve first on the product side before I start focusing on business development. So for me, balancing focus between business development and product development is really about first making sure you achieve product market fit, so your product really solves the needs of the market, and only then do you start worrying about like growing the business. And yeah, and you still have to like improve your product as well. Of course, you want to keep up with competitors. But I don't think business development is much of an issue until you really have your product nailed down. And I feel like there's still some stuff to do with Betalist. Next question. We have, I think, 3 questions left. So if anyone else has a question, feel free to leave it, like to enter it, because we'll probably get to it. GP Kestrog, I don't know how to pronounce that. GP Kestrog. Did you experience low conversion rates with Betalist? And if so, how did you deal with it? So I'm not sure what conversion rates you're referring to. So there's a few I can think of, like conversion rates in terms of people visiting the website and then signing up for the newsletter, or people visiting the website and then submitting their own startup, or people submitting their startup and then paying for an expedited review, which is one of our revenue models. And to be honest, I haven't, probably should, I haven't been tracking much of the conversion rates because, again, I think Betalist still needs some work on a fundamental level. So I don't want to focus too much on growth because I think it can lead you the wrong way if you don't be careful. But yeah, with regards to low conversion rates, I don't really know how to answer that. I see it has like 6 favorites, so it's a popular question. So yeah, in terms of conversion rates, maybe I can answer it like more generically. Like if you, let's see, I think the first step, like you want some way to reach out to your customer or potential customer. Like if someone comes to your website and they leave again, like it's very hard to get them back. I mean, there's ways like retargeting, which I think works really well, but it's not ideal. So ideally, you would somehow capture their email address, and then it becomes a matter of like turning them into like an actual customer, like actual user that actively engages with your product or service. But so once you have a way to reach out to your customer, then you can just, again, like ask them why they're not using it, or like why they signed up, like what their expectations are, and then try to meet those expectations. But as long as you don't have a way to reach out to the people visiting your website, it becomes very difficult. You can like A/B test different headlines and stuff like that, but still it's quite difficult. I guess one thing you can try, and I actually do that when I launch a new product, I add like a chat box to the website. I think there's one right here at the bottom right for you as well, or maybe it's just there for me, I don't know. But you know what, those OLARC, those kind of real-time chat things. If I launch a product, I usually add such a chat window, and then for the launch day, or maybe like also the few days after that, I make sure to be on the chat, and that way you can easily engage with the website visitor and try to understand why they visit your website, if everything is clear, if anything needs to be clarified, those kind of things. And I find it very helpful. Like if you get some PR coverage, or even if you get like featured on Betalist or whatever, like I think having like the chat window is probably not a long-term thing, especially not if you're like a small team. But yeah, in the beginning, find ways to engage with your website visitors and with your customers to try to understand uh, why they came to your website in the first place. And I think that will help with conversion rates, because then you know, okay, people come to the website for this reason. You can get a better understanding of the language that they use, so you can use the same language in your copywriting. So you can maybe like, if a customer tells you about the problems they have in the domain you're in, that you can actually often convert their problem statements into value propositions on your landing page. Yeah, so I hope that that's helpful. If it's not, feel free to send in more questions, and we can dive into a little bit more detail. Next question, Usefast. Hey Mark, I know you use advertising on Betalist as a revenue model. When did advertisers start to take interest in advertising on Betalist? How many users do you need? So if you go to betalist.com, we have one ad on the website and one ad in a newsletter. And if you're interested in like what we charge for those ads, you can see it at betalist.com/advertise. I think we charge $999, like basically $1,000 for 2 weeks. And when we started, of course, it was much lower. And the way we started was kind of by accident, I guess. We were like a few weeks in, and startups started submitting, their founders started submitting their startup to get featured. And at some point, a bigger company submitted their company to get featured, but I had to tell them like, sorry, we can't feature you because you're already an established company, so you're not a startup anymore. But I figured like, hey, if they are an established company, they probably have some advertising budget. So rather than saying, no, we can't feature you, I said like, we can feature you, but you get like a special spot. And it's, I mean, you have to pay for it. And they said, okay, well, what does it cost? And I didn't know what to charge. So I just came up with something. And I think I said like $100 or maybe 50 even, $50, 100, I don't know. And they said like, sure, that's where do we send the money? So that was easy money. And like the next time the similar situation occurred with a bigger company, or like an established company again, I told them like, hey, we can't feature you as a startup, but if you pay $200, you get featured on the website for a week. And I kept increasing the price every time that happened, until at some point advertisers started to say, well, that's too much. And then I knew I had to lower the price again. And that's actually, I think, a good tactic for pricing. Like, people often worry about like, oh, what prices should I set? Well, just try it out, increase, decrease, see what happens. But in terms of how many users you need for advertisements, I actually am not a fan of advertising as a revenue model. For Betalist, I think it's maybe like 30% of our income. And I might actually remove it at some point, because it's kind of like distracting sometimes. I mean, it's very subtle on our website, but still, you're basically selling your audience's attention. And I don't know, I mean, it works, I guess, but yeah, I'm just not a super fan of it. But if you have if you are like a publication company, like a content company, then advertising is often the primary revenue model. Yeah, and then the question like, how many visitors do you need? I don't know. You have to ask the advertisers. It probably depends on the advertiser. Like a company like Microsoft is probably not interested in advertising if you have like a few thousand visitors a month, because then it's just not worth the time with the types of budgets they have. But like a smaller company, they might be interested because they have smaller budgets anyway. So they are looking at smaller budget advertising campaigns. But yeah, so I don't know. It's also not just about how many users you have. It's also about how targeted your user base is. Like if you have all kinds of different users, then then it can be difficult to find an advertiser because an advertiser is looking again for a specific type of customer. So if you have all kinds of different users, then maybe 1 in 100 user is relevant for them. But if you have a very specific niche you're focusing on, for example, with Betalist, we focus on early stage startups, and most of the people in our audience are part of an early stage startup or are soon part of an early stage startup. So that's quite a specific audience, which means for companies like Stripe and like all these help desk support services and web hosting services, like that's exactly the type of audience they want to reach. Like they want to reach early stage startups because they often haven't decided yet which support service to use. So they want to make sure people use their support service early on, because then later on when the company grows, the startup grows, they still use it and they start paying more, etc. So yeah, I can't answer how many users you need for advertisers to be interested. You just have to reach out to advertisers, go to competitor websites, see who's advertising there, and then reach out to those companies. And you can even ask them, like if you're still a small website, you can just say that, like, we currently get so many page views. Is that interesting for you to advertise on? If not, how many users would we need for it to be interesting to you, and like what would you pay? And then you have a goal to work towards. Yeah, so yeah, that's the way I would do it. Like I don't have that answer, but advertisers do, so reach out to them. I would have advised. So next question, Oyvind Hellenes. The startup scene in Amsterdam seems great. What are your thoughts on it? So I'm actually not based in Amsterdam, but in Eindhoven, which is also in the Netherlands, but it's a different city. And I'm not too often in Amsterdam. I think maybe once a month, once every 2 months. I guess that's more than people from outside of the Netherlands. But yeah, what are my thoughts on the startup scene? Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of great people. I guess like it's not really comparable to like Silicon Valley, of course. Yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question, to be honest. I don't really have any thoughts on the startup scene. Like, I have people I enjoy spending time with in Amsterdam and in other cities of the Netherlands, and that's pretty much it. Like, I don't really think in terms of Amsterdam as a startup scene or Eindhoven as a startup scene. I guess I do. Like, I'm board member of Eindhoven Startups Foundation, where we try to like grow the ecosystem, like the startup ecosystem in Eindhoven. But yeah, I don't really have any interesting thoughts about that. Maybe I can come up with something. Like the startup scene is growing. I think there's a map, Dutch, no? Amsterdam startups. I don't know. I should look this up. Like, I'm here to answer questions, right? Where is it? Where is it? This is boring for you. I should have an answer. I don't know. I only know the map from Eindhoven, which is map.eindhovenstartups.com. Oh, it's getting dark in here. But yeah, the startup scene in Amsterdam, yeah, it's awesome. Next question. Again, from Oyvind Hellenes. And it's actually the last question I see. So we're already at 50 minutes. So maybe it should be the last question anyway. But if you have any last minute questions, just send them in. A more general question. What's the most important lessons you have learned as an entrepreneur? I think one of the most important lessons I've learned, and I keep getting back to this, is like talk to your customers, understand the problem you're solving, Don't start with the product, but start with the problem and then come up with a solution. So don't think in terms of products, but think in terms of solutions, or rather problems that needs to be fixed or solved. So that's one thing, like really taking a problem perspective. And then the other thing is to launch early. I feel like the more time you spend on like perfecting your product, the more difficult it becomes to launch it, because you spend maybe like a few months building a product, and then you plan maybe to launch it like in 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks later you're like, well, we've already invested so much time, we should probably like fix this little detail as well, and then that as well, before we really launch it. And then again, you're 2 weeks later, and like the cycle kind of repeats, because you're investing like emotionally and financially into your product. It becomes much harder to launch it because you know it's not perfect yet. And the thing is, of course, it's never perfect. But so the longer you wait launching a product, making it like publicly available, the harder it becomes. And it's quite risky, because as long as you're just developing your product and not getting it out there, you don't really know if you're building the right thing, because people aren't using it yet, and you're just building stuff based on assumptions, maybe some conversations with customers, hopefully, but yeah, ideally you would launch as quickly as possible, get feedback, and iterate based on that. So I would rather launch something which is a little bit crappy and get a lot of feedback I can use, than try to perfect something and potentially waste a lot of time and energy on something that people might not really want. So it's a lesson I've learned, is to launch early on, and really keep your first feature set very limited. And oftentimes you don't even need to build anything for your first version. Oftentimes you can do it by email or in an Excel spreadsheet. There's a lot of great stories on companies like Zappos and Airbnb, how they started out. And they didn't start out building a product. They started out solving a problem very manually, hands-on, and then later they built a product around it to scale it. But initially, it's about solving a problem and only later scaling it. And that's the lesson I've learned, and I'm still learning. So I think that that has been the last question. If there's any questions left, now is the time. Oh, we have no? No, I've already answered those. Yeah, I think that's all. Yeah, so I should probably say goodbye. Maybe check Twitter. Oh, people have been tweeting. I should have checked Twitter. Sorry, I didn't. Thanks for all the tweets everyone sent. Cool, yeah. So again, Oyvind, I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly, but you're welcome. He just sent thanks. I'm responding to that. Oh, another question. Divyaran7n. So that's quite a long username. So again, like if you sign up to Betalist, you're often the first to register your username. So you can just have your first username at the next Twitter. Just a shameless promotion there. So the question is, my username is quite long as well at Twitter. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are planning to launch a product which needs content in order to provide some value to the users? So to provide value, you need content. Well, start with the content, I guess. I am assuming you're talking about maybe like a two-sided marketplace, where you kind of have the chicken and the egg problem, where maybe like you have a buyer and a seller, and if you don't have any sellers, then there's nothing to buy. So buyers aren't showing up on your marketplace, and if you don't have any buyers, then sellers don't really get any value out of it because no one is buying their stuff, so they leave as well. So then, like, how do you solve that? I don't know if that's the question, but I'm gonna answer that one, and if the question was different, then just let me know. But the way you solve a chicken and egg problem, or like a two-sided marketplace, is by kickstarting one of the sites. So I think Betalist is actually a good example. We're kind of like a two-sided marketplace where we have startups on the one side and early adopters on the other side. And the way we kickstarted this was by searching for startups online and just posting them on a website. And then we slowly built an audience of early adopters. And then startups started coming to us as well because now we had the audience. So we kickstarted the startup side, the content side, just by manual labor, I guess. Early adopters, like an audience, formed around that. And then the startups came to us as well. So to solve a two-sided marketplace or like a multi-sided marketplace, you want to kickstart one part of it. And I think actually Airbnb is a good example of that as well. So the way Airbnb started is they started by scraping listings like apartment listings, etc., from Craigslist. So like Airbnb is like a typical two-sided marketplace as well. Like you have apartment listings, or what do they call them, like rooms or whatever, and like people that wanna rent a room. So you need to have one of those first before the other ones arrive as well. So they did that by just grabbing the content from other websites. So that's what I would suggest. And like I don't know the specific case for you, but so I can't go into more detail than that. But hopefully that's helpful. And if you want a more specific answer, you can hit me up on Twitter and tell me a little bit more about your specific startup, and maybe I have some more specific advice then as well. And I think that actually a lot of people have written about this as well. Like if you search for two-sided marketplace or a chicken and egg problem, you probably get some interesting results. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Thanks Eindhoven Startups for the tweets. I'm reading some tweets here. Yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up. That's exactly an hour, so I think that's perfect. So thanks everyone for sending in your questions. I hope some of it was useful. I never know. I just keep on blabbing. But yeah, hopefully it was helpful. If you have any more questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or send me an email, Marc with a C at betalist.com. If you want to get beta testers for your startup, you can submit your startup to betalist.com/submit. If you want to read the story of how I started Betalist, which includes, I guess, some insights and tips on how to get media coverage, you can read the article how I track TechCrunch into reading. Sorry, now I'm reading stuff here. How I track TechCrunch into writing about my startup. It's probably maybe somewhere here on the site as well. And otherwise, it's on the Talking Next Twitter account, I believe. Sunrep, you're welcome. Yeah, so I think that wraps it up for today. Thanks Talking Next for having me over. Like the Talking Next team and the audience, you guys. Thanks for asking your questions. And maybe we can do this some other time again. Have a great night. So now I need to find the button to stop the stream. Okay, I found it. Bye.